Today I'm going to show you the practice routine that my piano teacher had me doing week after week, year after year. It completely transformed the way I play piano, totally changed how I hear music, how I understand music theory, and even if you just implement one of the things I show you today, it's going to do the same thing for you. So I'm really excited. We got some good stuff today. Let's take a look. From 8th through 11th grade, my piano teacher was Mr. Mezzi, and I'm so thankful for him. He is the first piano teacher to show me chords, to show me how to read a lead sheet, how to play contemporary music and jazz music, and this was in addition to all the classical music that I was learning with him. And there were 3 things that he had me do every time I practiced piano. And the first thing was to play a major scale. It looked something like this. That's the G major scale. So I would practice it. I would learn the right hand fingering. I learned the left hand fingering. I'd put it together with my 2 hands. And then eventually I would play up to 4 octaves all the way up and down the piano every time I practiced piano. And this is so great because not only does it teach you what notes are in the scale, but it also is a great exercise for limbering up your fingers, for getting you to be able to relax, and eventually to be able to speed up as you play, so you actually get faster as a piano player as well. So that's the first thing I would say you should start doing in your piano practice, is to start practicing major scales. And maybe you aren't used to practicing major scales, or you haven't done much of that in the past. Well, I have something free I'd like to give you. It's called Mastering Major Scales. It's a mini course where I teach you how to construct a major scale, and then I go through all 12 major scales on the piano. I show you which notes are in the scale, I give you fingerings for the scale, and I give you practice tips for how to implement them into your practice routine so that you can learn what notes go into all 12 scales, and you're able to practice them, get faster at piano, and get better at understanding music theory, because then you'll know what notes are in all of the scales. You can find that at mccarthymusicschool.com/major scales. Mastering major scales, I think it'll really help you, especially if you haven't done much work with major scales in the past. The second thing he would have me do is to practice the arpeggio for that scale that I was working on. So the arpeggio is the broken chord pattern based on the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th notes of whatever scale you're working on. So in this case, we're in G major. So it's G, B, and D. And so with my right hand, I would play those with 1, 2, and 3, and then I would cross my thumb under, play G again, and then 2 on B, 3 on D, 5 on G all the way at the top, and then come back down the same way. I would do the same thing with my left hand, 5, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, and then come back down the same way. And together it would look like this. And that's good because it helps you learn what notes are in the major chord of whatever key you're working in. So if we're in the key of G, I would learn, oh, this is a G major chord, G, B, and D. And I would get practice playing those notes in a very fluid and useful manner. And the third thing I would do is I would practice the 7th chords for that key. I'll show you what that is. I would start out with the G major 7. That's the chord that's built on the 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th note of the scale, of the major scale that you're working in. In this case, it's G. So here's G, B, D, and F sharp. That's the G major 7. Then you lower the 7th down a half step to have the dominant 7, or we'd call it G7. Then you lower the 3rd down a half step. That's the minor 7. Then the 5th, you lower that down a half step. Now we have the half diminished, or the minor 7 flat 5 chord. And then the final one is you would lower the 7th down one more time to get the fully diminished 7 chord, or the G diminished 7 in this case. So what that would look like is I would take both hands, I'd play major 7, dominant 7, minor 7, half diminished 7, and diminished 7. And what's amazing is he would have me do that for different keys every week. So let's say one week I did the key of G major. I would practice the scale, the arpeggio, and the 7th chords for G major. Then the next week I would do D major, and I would do those exact same things for D major. Then I'd go through A major, E major, B major. So in 12 weeks, I would have done all of those things for all 12 major scales. And then guess what? The next week, we would start again with C major and go through all 12 keys again. So over the course of a year, I would have multiple times I would have played these things in all 12 keys, and it really not only helped me exercise my fingers and get loose and be able to play quickly, but it helped me really get to know these keys better, be able to play better in each of the 12 keys, and that is so crucial to being a well-rounded and skilled piano player. I'm so thankful my teacher had me practicing this, and what's really great is years later, after I had been playing professionally, I actually ran into Mr. Mezzi again. I was at a wedding of my friend, and this friend was a mutual friend of ours, and I didn't know that he was going to be there, but I actually saw him at the wedding reception. We were able to actually sit together at the same table, and I was able to let him know, I am so thankful for all the things that you taught me, because it's really helped me to be a piano player and a songwriter that I would just not be if he hadn't have taught me those things. So what do you think? Do you do things like this in your own practice routine? Do you practice scales and arpeggios and chords? Do you do things in all 12 keys? These are things that you should start implementing into your practice today. And if you're brand new to scales and you've never really practiced them, or you would just like a brush up on what the notes of the different scales are, definitely check out that mini course, Mastering Major Scales. It's at mccarthymusicschool.com/major scales. It's totally free, and I think it'll really help you out. Otherwise, thanks for watching today, and I'll see you next time.